Hopefully this is working now. Let me just check which audio setting I'm on. Yeah. I've been having a few issues with my live stream, which is why I haven't been doing videos, because I record straight to live stream as unlisted, and then I get all the setup done and then I release it, and somehow that's not working anymore. OBS and YouTube, this compatible. Anyway, moving on. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the philosophy of Stoicism and how it applies to the bullet journal method, because if you've read the book up to part 3, you will be aware that the section on control, which is, I think it starts on page 189, although Stoicism is mentioned before that several times. The concept of Stoicism underpins the bullet journal method. What I thought would be useful is for those who have no background in philosophy to get kind of a potted history of what it is, where it came from, what it's about, how it relates to modern stuff that is similar but not necessarily the same, and how the bullet journal method picks up on those themes and brings it forward. So that's what I'm going to do today. Stoicism began in Hellenistic period in Greece. So you're looking at around 300 BC. It's a pre-Christian philosophy. And I think Marcus Aurelius, who was the last major classical philosopher, died in 121 AD, I think. So you're looking at even a very well-advanced system was still 100 years before Christianity. So it's not a Christian thing. It's from the period of Greece when they still had pantheons and multiple gods and all that kind of stuff. It's also a very different system and set of values. So things that were very, very common in Greece were not necessarily the way we look at them today. I can't get into all of that, but one of the things you can look at is muses. Elizabeth Gilbert did a very good TED talk on the muse and creativity, and she explains the Greek theory of the muse and how you weren't responsible for anything that you made. It was all God, gifts from the gods. And Stoicism comes from this innate ability that we all have to use reason and logic above emotion. So the founder of what we now call Stoicism was considered to be Zito of Sinum. He was, sorry, Citum, I always pronounce that wrong, C-I-T-U-M. And he was originally one of the Cynic philosophers. Now, Cynicism is an area of philosophy, and Stoicism is a refined version of it. So there's lots of different versions of Cynicism, and Cynicism itself is completely separate, but Stoicism was a branch of Cynicism. In a similar way that Christianity and Judaism are branches of the Abrahamic religions. Okay, so if you think about it in that sense, it makes it more easy to understand. Well-known proponents of Stoicism were, of course, Seneca, who most of you have heard of, Cato Jr., or Cato the Younger, as they like to call him, and Marcus Aurelius, who also is very well known. The basics of Cynicism are threefold: logic and reason, following the ethical laws of nature. If you want to know about the laws of nature, you can go and look them up on Google. I believe they are part of Socratic philosophy, because Stoicism uses the Socratic method, which is always asking questions. Teachers who use the Socratic method tell you what to read, you turn up at class, and then they fire questions at you and expect you to know the answers. They don't teach you, they expect you to already know. It's a bit weird. Anyway, so logic and reason, natural law of ethics, and positivity. And the purpose of Stoicism is very, very similar to Zen Buddhism. Now, Zen Buddhism is all about, it's founded on 4 principles, which if you are familiar with Buddhism, you already know, and you will be aware that they sound very similar to the Stoic ones that we'll cover in a moment. But Buddhism is all about reaching a higher state of enlightenment. So it's about self. Stoicism is not necessarily about self. It's about reducing negativity to improve well-being, and not just well-being of self, but well-being of all. So it's actually quite a communal based aspect. So it's like, if you think of the concept of chi, whereas there is this life force running through the whole universe, it's kind of similar to that in that we are all part of a whole. Therefore, what I do affects you, and what you do affects me. So if I'm in a bad mood and I project that out towards you, you're going to end up in a bad mood. You're going to feel some of my negativity. If you were in a really good mood, it might bring you down a bit. If you were in a bad mood, it might make you want to join me and start ranting as well. So the whole point of reducing negativity is to accept that most immediate reactions come from the emotion. And the emotion happens because we allow the ego to react first before the id, which is our inner logical self, takes over and thinks about what's going on. So it's the knee-jerk reaction. And 9 times out of 10, knee-jerk reactions are direct responses to what's going on around us. Positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity, but you will always get that one person who is always negative. And you have to temper those emotions with logic and reason, because logic and reason will always give you the same answer. Logic and reason will always give you the answer that is best for everyone, regardless of what else is going on around it. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you're in a coffee shop, you're on your way to work. You weren't running late, but you are now because this silly woman in front of you, for some reason, can't find her credit card. So now there's a queue built up behind you. The guy behind you keeps pushing into you and he's all smelly and sweaty and you're not happy about this. So his body odor is causing you to not want to stand near him any longer than necessary. The woman in front of you is getting annoying because who comes into a coffee shop with no idea where their credit card is? I mean, at least have your wallet in your hand when you walk in the shop or something, you know. And all of this negativity snowballs to the point where eventually you end up at work and you snap at the person who's at work because you're late now because somebody else put you in a bad mood. Notice how that's all about somebody else. It's all about what somebody else has done to you. In actual fact, that woman not being able to find her credit card in her purse has nothing to do with you whatsoever. You cannot control it. You can't judge it because you don't know what's gone on. You know, maybe she said to her husband yesterday, "Oh, can you fill up my car with petrol?" So he took her card and he filled up the car with petrol. And when he came back, he put it in the wrong pocket. You know, it happens. Maybe she took her purse out of her wallet out of her purse and she didn't realise, so she hasn't got her credit card. You know, any number of things could be going on here. She could have had her purse stolen. It might not even be her fault. And yet the natural reaction is to get frustrated because it's affecting us. And therefore we tend to take it out on the next person. The logical, reasonable answer to that is to look at the situation and say, this situation is negative. What can I do to make it positive? There's lots of things you can do. You can not be negative. That would be a start. Just be patient. Just wait it out. You know, is it the end of the world if you're 5 minutes late for work? Probably not. If it bothers you that much, why don't you get your phone out and ring ahead and just say, hey, I'm held up. I'm going to be a few minutes late. Is it really the end of the world if you're a couple of minutes late? Is there another way around the situation? Let's say the woman has all she's got in front of her is a coffee. So why not say, hey, if all you've got is a coffee, you know, I see you in here all the time. Next round's on you. I'll get this one. Don't worry about it. Go find your credit card. You pay for her coffee. You get your coffee. Job done. Everybody's out the door. She's less anxious because she's not looking for her credit card while she's holding up everybody else. The cashier is able to get rid of his queue and you are able to get your coffee and move on, having also performed your random act of kindness for the day by buying somebody a coffee. Alternatively, you could say to her, hey, why don't you let me hold your laptop and books so you can get into your handbag with both hands then and find your card. Again, the compassionate, logical response to alleviate the negativity of the situation. Her anxiety reduces. She realizes you're not upset with her because she's holding you up. So her guilt reduces. She's able to think clearly because that brings her emotional state down. And then she can look carefully and properly for her card, which probably is in there, and she just can't see it. So that's a very simplified version. But in all of our actions and interactions throughout the day, we have the opportunity to react emotionally or stop and think about a logical response. I'll come back to that in a second. There's a couple of misconceptions about Stoicism. One of them is that we are unemotional. Stoics are not unemotional. We have emotions just like everybody else. We just don't feel the need to rant and rave in public and get all huffy and puffy about things that we can't control. If it's out of our control, there's no point in getting wound up about it. It doesn't serve a purpose. Mark Twain famously said, I have had many worries in my life. Most of them never actually happened. You know, you can't spend your entire life stressing about stuff that is completely irrelevant and out of your control. We are able to have emotion, but we are able to control our emotion in order to not project negativity onto others, or in order to have a reasonable and sensible, logical response to a problem and fix it, or mitigate the damage it does. Another misconception about Stoicism is that it's some kind of spiritual belief system. It's not. If you want the spiritual belief version of this, then what you want to look at is Zen Buddhism, which is very similar, but it's more spiritual. Like I said at the beginning, it's more about self-enlightenment. It's not about communal well-being. The only purpose of Stoicism is for everybody to be happy, no matter what's going on. Even when something really bad is going on, you can still be happy. In the concept of you can be happy with your life. You know, you may be having a bad day because your anxiety is playing up. You may be struggling with grief. You may be having pain issues today, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are unhappy with your life. It just means you're having a particularly bad day. Another way of looking at it is the more modern. You see a lot of TED Talks on this kind of thing. And I've mentioned it before when I talked about Sarah, who I can't remember the name of. Yet again, I cannot remember that girl's surname. The Art of Not Giving an F. Again, it's about, does this matter? if I stress about this, if I get frustrated about this, if I huff and puff and get all, does it serve any purpose? Probably not. Is there something more constructive I could be doing? That is always one of the paramount questions when you're working with Stoicism. So it's not a belief system, it's a set of values that you adhere to, which then becomes a way of life rather than a method, and a method rather than a belief system. So it's not about, I believe in being this, that, and the other. It's a way of being that enables you to live a happy and contented life. And just because you're happy and content doesn't mean you're not going to strive for more. You're not going to strive to do better. It just means that you are also happy and content with where you are now. And you're not constantly throwing negativity at things. It's like a meditation practice, similar to Zen Buddhism meditation, where you are keeping yourself in the present moment. You are not getting frustrated that you are going to be late for work. That's the future. You haven't got there yet. For all you know, you could leave the coffee shop, there could be a massive accident on the road, and you could be 2 hours late, and you'll be glad you stopped for that coffee because that's the only drink you'll have for the next 2 hours. You know, there is always something that's going to change. You cannot control anything external. And you cannot guarantee that if that woman had not lost her credit card, you would have got your coffee and got to work on time. That kind of black and white thinking is coming from ego. It's all about me. I'm happy if. There is no if in I'm happy. There is I'm happy and. So I'm happy with my life and I have depression. I'm happy with my life and I have an anxiety disorder. I'm happy with my life and a friend of mine just passed away, therefore I'm grieving. You know, just because you are going through an emotion doesn't mean that that emotion controls your life. And one of the ways that Sarah, whatever her name is, talks about it, I wish I could remember the girl's name. I need to write it down, I think. Stick on a post-it note under my screen. One of the ways that you can deal with this is by saying, okay, this is what's happening. How can I look at this in a way that doesn't make it feel like a negative experience? What can I do to alleviate the problem? What can I do to stay in the present moment and work with what's in front of me rather than worrying about what's going to happen or what could happen and so on? And that's twice I've tried to finish that sentence, and because I keep forgetting her name, I then forget what I was going to say afterwards. So I'm going to move on. Another misconception is that Stoics are cold and remote and that we don't like other people. That's not true. Aquarians, we tend to be the ones who don't like people, love humanity, don't like people. But Stoics are very much about objectivity. It's not about me and what I think is good for you. It's about what I can do to make everything better than it is now. So you're not trying to control others. You're not trying to control what's happening. You're not even trying to really control the situation. What you're trying to do is inject your response into the situation to make it more positive. It may still be a negative situation on some level for somebody, but you're still injecting positivity into it. Oh, this woman can't find her purse. Here, let me hold your laptop for you. That alleviates her stress of trying to find something with one hand in her bag while also trying to not drop her laptop, and at the same time worrying that she's holding you up. You've offered to help her out in a nice way, so she now knows that 2 of those 3 problems are no longer there. They're no longer valid things to worry about. All she's got to do now is fully concentrate on finding her money. Compassion is a big thing with Stoicism, because by showing compassion, you are being positive. Most of the time, if you simply say to yourself, what can I do to help? Then, as they say, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. So if you're not adding to the negativity, then you are part of the solution. And it's about having equanimity and indifference in the face of external forces that are beyond your control and may be emotionally charged. Think of the person who comes up to you and starts an argument in your face. You can argue back, and that would be a perfectly normal emotional reaction to have. But the stoic in you would say, hang on a minute, this guy's having a go at me. There's a very good chance that all this emotion is nothing to do with me at all. And even if it is, it's really not my problem. The problem is, what is it he's complaining about? So this is something that's taught to customer service reps in a very roundabout way. The customer is always right. It doesn't mean the customer is right no matter what. It means you always agree with the customer, because the more you agree with somebody who is angry, the less likely they are to keep ranting. If you keep saying, no, that's not right, no, that's not right, and arguing back, you fuel the fire. You're adding negativity to negativity, and it just snowballs. By throwing positivity into the mix and saying, yes, sir, I'm terribly sorry, you're absolutely right, boom, you deflate their sense of, well, I've got to stand up and fight for what I want. They don't have to fight anymore because you've just given it to them. Maddie. 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 Hey, leave it. Maddie, leave it. Sorry, it's neighbours coming home time, so they keep barking at things. Maddie. Hey, hey, hey. Stop, please. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, so where were we? Indifference to external forces. Yeah. So you don't allow other people's bad day. I finally remembered it. Right. Okay. Sarah says, are you really having a bad day? Or did you just have a 10-minute interaction which frustrated you so much you're still holding on to the residue of it? There we go. I finally got there. Interestingly enough, Ryder talks about that in terms of tasks and multitasking. And when you finish a task, the reason you take a break between tasks rather than move from one task to the next is so that any residue that you're holding over from the previous task that your brain is still working on is alleviated during your rest period. So your gears gradually wind down and then you can start afresh on something new. If you go straight into a new task, you've still got residue of the old task. Think of it like you're baking a pie, okay? And you make the pastry and you got flour all over your hands, and then you go to make chocolate pudding. You're going to get flour in your chocolate pudding, aren't you? Because you haven't washed your hands in between. Think of washing your hands as the break that makes a clean getaway from the previous task to the next one. That's a similar thing to what we have here. So Stoicism is based on being in agreement with the laws of nature. As I said, if you want to know about the laws of nature, Maddie's stealing things out of the recycling. If you want to hear about the laws of nature, you can go and Google those. They're very well known. They're easy to find. In order to adhere to the laws of nature, Stoics believe that you have to have 4 cardinal virtues. 1, wisdom. You have to be able to reason your way through things and understand the implication of your actions. You have to have courage. You have to be the one who is willing to take an action rather than just being the passive one who sits there and goes, I'm in a hurry, can't you hurry up? You've got to be courageous and say, hey, let me get you coffee. You get one tomorrow when you see me. We're always in here together. You've got to have that moment of, I can solve this. Let me do it. You've got to have a sense of justice. So you also have to have a sense of what's fair. There is a difference between helping someone out because that particular day she's obviously just misplaced her credit card, and constantly bailing someone out because they are lazy and they forget to bring money with them, or because they're trying to scam the system. Those are two different things. So you have to have a sense of justice in order to recognize when it is appropriate to alleviate the negativity. Now, it may be that it's always appropriate to alleviate the negativity words, because your sense of justice might be, yes, but that one person doesn't matter against the whole. There's 7 other people waiting behind me, you know? Maybe it's worth getting that one person out of the way and on their way in order for the 8 of you to be on your way. That's, again, that comes back to wisdom and judgment. You also have to have temperance. This is the one I struggle with. You cannot go in to a situation all guns blazing, I know the answer to the problem, because that's only going to cause more friction. Ryder talks about friction a lot. He talks about good friction. He talks about bad friction. Obviously, good and bad are relative according to where you're looking at it from. Temperance is that ability to, having made the decision to act positively, you don't then go completely the other way. Temperance is difficult. We all know those people. They're few and far between, sadly, but those people who, instead of getting frustrated at the woman who can't find her card, will just immediately say, oh, let me help you out, sweetheart. I'll buy you coffee. And they do it out of a sense of emotional response because they are empaths. That is a very different thing to logically reasoning that that is the appropriate positive response, or that is one of many appropriate positive responses. Epictetus said in his discourses, to become educated in Stoicism means to learn what things are your own and what things are not. That comes into a sense of control. What can you do something about and what can you not do something about? The modern version of that is commonly known as the Serenity Prayer. Now, despite the fact that Christianity has nothing to do with Stoicism, because Stoicism predates Christianity completely, the Serenity Prayer still adheres to the tenets of Stoicism. It just is that you are asking God for these virtues, whereas Stoics believe you already have these virtues, you're just not using them properly. So you are asking for the ability to accept what you can't change what you are able to, and be wise enough to know the difference. So again, acceptance and change, that's your courage, justice, and temperance. And wisdom to know the difference is your wisdom, obviously, your logic and reason. What can I do something about? What can I not do something about? And how can I do something about it? And being able to identify which ones are battles you can win. It's about control. And for Stoics, the emphasis is on the difference, knowing the difference, knowing what battles to pick. In a very, very modern... I'm sorry, I'm having trouble speaking because Maddie's messing with the metal can and it's setting my teeth on edge. The most modern version of this, in a very Disney-fied version of it, is the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. And that is from Captain Jack Sparrow. Now, if you look at Captain Jack Sparrow's actions in Pirates of the Caribbean and the other films, he does not react to things. He waits to see what happens, and then he responds accordingly. And because he does that, he's always able to remain in a state of, it'll be fine. Everything's going to work out. Don't worry about it. Life's good. I'm happy. Yes, he's very manipulative with people, and that's not necessarily something that is part of Stoicism. It's not about manipulating people. It's about being able to change situations. But most of what he does is looking at the problem and solving the problem of the situation, not what people think the problem is. So you think your problem is that you are going to be late for work, and therefore you're angry about it, or frustrated at the very least. So the problem becomes your frustration, not the fact that you're going to be late for work, not the fact that this woman is looking for her credit card. The problem becomes your frustration, because that frustration is what you're going to carry around with you all day. So the main tenet of Stoicism is that the only thing that you are able to control is your reactions. You can control your emotions and not simply knee-jerk react to anything. You cannot control other people or what they do. You cannot control fate and destiny, or whatever it is you call it. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control what happens after you act. But you can control not being in a negative space, not immediately reacting just off the cuff that may not be the right reaction. It might worsen the situation. And you can control how you respond, because once you think about what you do, you are able to respond. We'll come back to that in a second. Knowing the difference is essentially knowing what you can control. So it's always asking, is this worth fighting for? If you stopped to think about, is it really worth getting all stressed out because this woman in front of me can't find her credit card and therefore I'm going to be late for work? And is it really that big of an issue that I should be stressed out about it? 9 times out of 10, you'll realize actually, no, it's not. And if it is, there's usually an answer. Okay, maybe you have to be at work on time because you've got a meeting. Why can't you call ahead and say, I'm sorry, I'm running a few minutes late. Can you let everybody know? Nobody cares if you're late to a meeting, which gives them time to have an extra cup of coffee or an extra few minutes to prepare. They might be late themselves and want to just sit for a few minutes. Nobody cares if you're late as long as you let them know first. They might still moan about it if they're not stoics, but the chances are if you just let them know, call their secretary and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a few minutes late. Please make sure he knows that. You could even say, I'll call back when I'm in the building, which then again gives them that few seconds notice to say, okay, he's here now, he'll be with you in a minute. It's about having consideration for the other person. So that other person is not sitting around waiting for you, which is what you're really bothered about. You're not bothered about being held up or how long it takes to get your coffee or how long it's going to take you to get to work or being late for work. You're worried about letting another person down. Maddie, stop. Oh, she's out of control tonight. You're worried about letting another person down. And 9 times out of 10, you're not actually worried about letting the person down. You're worried about how they're going to react. This is a really important meeting. They are going to be annoyed if you are not on time. The cardinal rule of job interviews, don't be late. Well, sometimes you can't help it. And you know that. And they know that. Part of the golden rule is to always phone ahead and say, I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit late. Please let the person after me go in first if they're already there, and I will wait. Okay? It shows consideration for your colleagues. It's teamwork. They'll love it. The bullet journal method boils this down to asking 2 questions. Right at the beginning of the book, is it vital? And does it matter to me or someone I love? When you start asking logical questions about things in your life, you start to get reason in your response. And reason is twofold. Reason means a sense of logic and a sense of objectivity, a sense of working out what is necessary. And it also means giving a reason why. In fact, giving a reason comes from Stoic philosophy. If you can give a reason for something, you have applied Stoic logic, because you have looked at something objectively and come to a conclusion that is not about you and your emotions and your ego. It's about you thinking through a problem and coming to a solution. So therefore, if you have got a reason for it being vital or it mattering, you have a reason why. You have the why to, is this worth my time? The what and the how you can figure out. You have a why. And this creates that essential pause that is necessary in the bullet journal method. Carrie talks about this in her video yesterday. It's about halfway through. I'm sorry, I didn't take the exact time. But she talks about a built-in essential pause, that the extra moment of writing something down. If you are thinking, why am I even bothering writing this down? The chances are that whatever it is, you either don't want to do it, don't need to do it, and shouldn't be writing it down in the first place. If you cannot think of a reason why you need to do it, do you actually need to do it? Probably not. Alternatively, if you can't think of a reason why you need to do it, do you have a reason why somebody else needs to do it? Carrie gives a very funny anecdote about socks and having far too many teenagers in the house, which explains that very well. You are avoiding a knee-jerk reaction to, oh, I've got to do such and such. You know, the busy, busy, busy that we tried to avoid right at the beginning. You're not being productive if you're just being busy, because you're not saying, why am I doing this? You're not looking at what you're doing and thinking about it. You're just acting on automatic pilot. I'm busy, busy, busy. I've got to do, got to do, got to do. And that's the whole point with trying to step away from that. If you are able to downplay that negative knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I've got to do this, or, oh, this is happening, you are able to reason through to a response. And the reason that that is crucial is that you are then turning it into a conversation with life. You are not reacting to stuff that is going on around you. You are taking back control and saying, okay, this is happening. How am I going to respond? If I respond like this, these could be the outcomes. If I respond like that, these will be the outcomes. I don't want either of those, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, let's take this path. What am I going to do if they choose this route or this route? You then have a logical way of making decisions that will give you a positive outcome or a better outcome. The better of two evils is still the better. And by turning it into a conversation, you are giving yourself the opportunity to have a dialogue with your own life. Why do you want to do this? Is it worth your time? Is it necessary? Do you really want this in the first place? You wanted this 5 years ago. Is it still relevant now? And all of that comes down to reflection. And I'm sorry, I just lost my place because I was trying to read something here. Yeah, he actually talks about this in the gratitude section, where he talks about one of my favorite characters, Dale Cooper, Agent Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, who gives himself a little present every day, and that present is 2 really good cups of coffee. Black coffee, of course. it's a very simple pleasure to take when you are essentially a homicide detective dealing with horrible stuff all the time. And rather than focusing on all the negative impact that your job does for you every single day, you take that 2 minutes to just say, you know what, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to have a really, really damn good cup of coffee. Okay? It's taking stock of what is good. No matter how small, there is always good. Yes, my dogs have been barking through this video. Yes, I keep losing my train of thought because of it. But hey, my dogs are healthy and they bark. They're fine. If they're barking, they're alive. Yay. That's a good thing. My dogs don't like people coming up around the fence too close. That means they're guarding the property. They're doing what they do. That's what dogs do. I'm not going to get on them about it. I'll try to keep them quiet because it annoys the neighbours. But other than that, if they bark, they bark. It's natural. They're dogs. What do you expect? So that is Stoicism kind of in a nutshell, if you like. I have written it down in my bullet journal, and I can't remember if I said this at the beginning because this is the second recording because I had trouble with the first one going to YouTube. I've actually put a free download of this in the description. So I scanned it and I put it on 2 A4 size pieces of paper because tiny writing. And that way you'll be able to see my notes and you'll still be able to add your own bits and, whatever you need to do. It's just useful to have some notes, I think, for this kind of thing. If you then want to go and look up any particular bit of it, then you can go and do that. Or if you want to refer to the book, the main section of this, it's all section 3, but the main section is page 189 onwards when he talks about control and gratitude. So that is where you take back agency in your own life and you stop being on autopilot and knee-jerk reacting to stuff and start thinking about the reason why you're doing things and what that reason is and whether it is worth your time and your energy, or should you drop that particular battle, let somebody else fight it and move on to a new goal. I hope that's been of use to you, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye.